Welcome to the podcast that brings you interviews, reviews, arts and entertainment news, all wrapped up in one place. You're listening to Art to Art with Amanny Mo. Coming up in this episode, I'll be having an art to art with a comedian who made his mark on Britain's Got Talent in 2017 and has, let's face it, never really looked back since.
Thank you so much, brother.
Daliso Chaponda has been on the comedy circuit for over 20 years, kicking off his first solo show, Feed This Black Man, in Canada. But fast forward to today, following on from being a finalist on BGT, Daliso's career has gone from strength to strength, even though he does tell me he absolutely had no clue what the golden buzzer meant.
It felt amazing, even though at the time I didn't fully grasp what it meant. Because I thought, I've done really well in this competition, I've got the buzzer, I'm cheering, but I did not fully grasp how life-changing that was. I just thought I did well in this competition, all is well. But when it aired that night, it was just madness.
Now, some of you may remember his BGT auditions, his viral videos, recognise him from numerous UK TV panel shows, The Royal Variety Show, or even his current BBC radio show, Citizen of Nowhere. But for now, my brilliant guest is back on stage. Yes, Daliso Chaponda is back on tour in the UK with Feed This Black Man Again, which contains a bit of reflection and some rewritten jokes from that very first solo show over 20 years ago. There's also an African leg of the tour planned for the future as well. So without further ado, please let me introduce you to the successful stand-up comedian who brings his charm and funny chops to podcast proceedings. You're listening to Art to Art with Amanny Mo, and I'd love to have an Art to Art with you. If you want to find me on socials, it's just Amanny Mo, AMANNYMO. Why not follow, like, and share the love with your friends? It's very nice to meet you, Daliso. Very nice to meet you.
Hello. And your name is Amanny?
Amanny. I do love finding out about names and what they mean, and are they significant? Did you love your name as you were growing up?
Well, interestingly, so my name means blessing, right?
Oh.
In Chichewa, which is the language of Malawi. And what's funny is my brothers' names are much more dire. So my older brothers, Masauso, Mazunzo, and Teziona, they all have dire names, which are struggle, trouble, and I have seen, like I have endured. But I think it's my parents were naming their kids based on what they were enduring at the time. And I was the only one born in happy times, comparatively. So I'm like the privileged kid in that, like, my family's fates had started to do well by the time I was born, while my brothers, they have the Oliver Twisty kind of stories of, like, you know, not that I still had hand-me-downs and stuff, but at the same time, my dad got a job with the UN when I was relatively young, so everything was better than what my brothers went through.
I love that story. I'm so glad I asked as well, because my name means wishes in Arabic. It comes from the word omnia. And my parents always used to say, well, you know, we only wanted a boy and a girl. That was enough. And we'd wished for a girl. And there you came along. And I was like, I'm not sure they would have been saying that when I was about 13 or 12 or 13, when I was going through that hormonal slamming the doors and I hate you, that kind of phase. But, you know, hey, that's how the cookie crumbles, right?
Definitely.
Now, look, I mean, obviously you're on tour with Feed This Black Man Again, but
yes.
Before we talk about your new tour, this year's tour, your first tour was 20 years ago.
Well, my first time I did a show. So
First show was 20 years.
So it wasn't that, like, touring came much later. Touring you do when you've actually got an audience. But the first time I got a theater, put on a show, did every joke I've ever done was 22 years actually. It was Feed This Black Man. I did it in Canada. I didn't know what I was doing, right? You know what I mean? I was like a young, ambitious. I bit off a lot more than I could chew. I had very big ambitions. I talked about very difficult subjects, which I think the arrogance or naivete of youth. I wrote a book at the age of 21 about genocide. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's one of those things where you write things where you're like, this is going to be the next great African novel, and I'm going to do a 1-hour show which is going to move everybody, and I'm going to solve racism, and I'm going to talk about colonialism, and you talk about all these things before you fully even understand them. But there's something kind of lovely about how much you bite more than you could chew when you're young. Now, before I go into any project, I'm already analyzing the reasons I shouldn't do it.
Yep.
And sometimes I kind of miss the swinging for the fences. So like the current show I'm doing it's not a redo of my first show from 22 years ago, but it's looking at those themes and then writing what I would say about them now. So it's almost like if, Quentin Tarantino 20 years later looks at that early Pulp Fiction script and says, I'm going to give it another go at the things I was trying to talk about then and see what an older me writes.
Yeah, I hear that. And actually, there's something about youth and being young and brazen and just not caring in a sense,
And also the energy I miss most. You know what I mean? I remember writing for like 6-7 hours. Now I'm writing 2 hours and then I'm having a snack. Another hour, maybe I need a nap. Another hour, we can't just go. Nah. I used to have all-nighters. The only way I have an all-nighter now is because there's a deadline tomorrow and my producer is like, where's the script? And that's the only panic which endures the all-nighters. Well, when I was young, I'd just do them. That was just how we rolled.
You're triggering my university days. I remember I only really work well under extreme pressure, it seems. And I actually once ran in my pajamas all the way, before that was a thing, by the way.
Yes.
I ran all the way to uni in my pajamas. I didn't care to make that 5 p.m. deadline. And I'm not a runner either. That was the most awful sensation of knowing you've just finished something and it's all your fault because it's late anyway. And then having to run, which is not your thing, and you're really out of breath just to make it there in your pajamas, was even more humiliating. But I was like, I don't care, I haven't got time for this.
Oh, what a nightmare.
Just a nightmare. So I'm feeling that. You mentioned there the fact that, you do hark back to that show from 20 years ago. But are there any other themes that are fueling your kind of comedy in this show?
Yes. So in this show, which is Feed This Black Man, again, right, I talk about the things which I talked about back then, like colonialism and charities, the way Africa is portrayed in the world. But I also just look at aging, the fact that I'm 20 years on looking back. So it starts out about the things which I was talking about then, but the show is more about how you see the world different as you grow up, the gap between who you were then and who you are now. And actually, I dream that when I'm 62, 20 years from now, I'll still be doing comedy and I can Feed This Black Man again, or something like that. Like I could do the 20 years later kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that would be amazing.
Daliso, when you go on stage or you're getting ready for stage, do you have any kind of rituals? Are there things that you need to do before you settle into that show, even though it's your own show, but some people like to do certain little things?
The only thing I do, it's not very romantic, it's not very superstitious, but I have mind maps of the show, which have all the jokes in a very elaborate, colorful mind map, which looks a bit like the map of the London Tube. It's just lots of circles with colors and words. And I just kind of look at them because the truth is that even though it's a 90-minute show, it's actually drawing from 2 hours of possible jokes. So none of them are exactly the same because I always adapt a bit to the room. So like if people in the room like a certain thing, I elaborate on that more. So I just kind of remind myself of it, the flow of it. By the time you've hit number 30 or 35, I'm not really looking at the notes anymore. It's just like, it's become part of me. Yeah. But I'm still at the point where I refresh it just before the show, just to make sure. But that's not much of a fancy ritual. There are people who pour water on the ground and must walk over it, or people who they're in the zone. Like I've got opening acts, and my opening act's always like, oh, is it okay if we talk to you? We don't want to take you out of the zone. And I'm like, talk to me. Let's have a drink. I don't have a zone. But as I said, I've been performing for 22 years. I could perform with can dancers trying to distract me. I've just been doing it so long, like nothing can throw you off.
That's fair enough. I guess everybody's different. I want to talk to you about BGT in a minute, but I also wanted to ask you, what is I don't want to say the worst experience you've had as a comedian, but has there been kind of a low experience that made you think, what the hell am I doing? And then what's the high? So what's the kind of opposite of that?
So the lows are not from the art. The art is always delight. Perform is always delight. That's the reason why you do it. But very early on, you are not making a lot of money, right? And I remember traveling halfway across the country. We went down to Newquay. So that's like, 6 hours of commuting? And then we go to the show. Around 4 people had showed up. So the show was canceled.
Oh.
And none of us were paid. And we had to drive back unpaid. The financial part of being a comedian, especially early on, are rough. Now I'm in a privileged space. But when I started, you're getting paid barely anything. That was just one of those, like, why did I make these choices? I'm in a job where you're like, it's almost like a hobby. It's not sensible. I'm good at like math and physics. I could have been a programmer or like worked in a lab. Do you know what I mean? You have that dark tea time of the soul when you're like, visit my brother's house and it's a lovely 2-story thing. And I look at this lovely car. Meanwhile, I'm in a bed sit. You know what I mean? Like, there were many moments of just like, what did I do? I just threw my life away. What did I do? This is terrible. So that was very much the low point. And then the high point was actually even before BGT. One of the high points was the first time I did a show in Malawi. And you've got to understand that at the time, there were no stand-up shows in Malawi. So they were funny people, but it was more like acting. It wasn't stand-up. So I put on a show. We gambled. We didn't know if it was going to be successful. It was sold out. It was amazing.
Wow.
And I think that was one of the first tastes I had of like, oh my gosh, it can be amazing.
That's just wonderful. And that was was that in your hometown then?
It was in Lilongwe, so it was in the capital city of Malawi.
I've got goosebumps because I'm imagining how wonderful it must have been to perform to a home crowd, as it were. But I imagine also that it just must have been a proud moment as well.
It was great also because like my family came and saw. It's also very hard to explain stand-up and the shows I do. And it was just lovely that they could see it and they could see the mad excitement and it was in the newspaper. And it was just one of those things where it was almost a precursor of things to come. So now when I do shows in Malawi, it's insane. I'm like, Malawi and McIntyre. I have like giant audiences. The president's wife was in the audience. It's like absolutely bonkers when I do it now. But back then, it was just from word of mouth. I'd not done telly or anything, but I had fans who'd seen a little bit of me here and there. So it was really lovely to have a show like that.
You're listening to Art with Amanny Mo. And if you're enjoying this arts and entertainment podcast, there are plenty more episodes that you can listen to, either by heading to your favourite listening platform, or you can click through to our website, Art2Art, that's art2art.podbean.com. That's part one of my chat with the brilliant stand-up comedian Daliso Chaponda, who's currently out on his UK tour until the end of June with Feed This Black Man Again. And if you want to find out any further information or maybe bag some tickets, you can head on over to his website, dalisochaponda.com. That's DALISOCHAPONDA.com. Coming up shortly, we'll have part two of my chat with comedian Daliso Chaponda. We talk about the shifts in his career post BGT, discuss diversity, and there are some awesome picks on Daliso's watch list, so do not miss out.
Thank you for that welcome, and thank you, Amanda, for pushing that buzzer. Ever since you did it, my life has been bonkers. People approaching me on the road saying, well done, but the most common question I get is, you're from where? Is it Mali, Maui? It's Malawi. And if any of you don't know where that is, it's where Madonna adopted all the babies from. That's us. You're jealous. I do miss my little brother.
BGT, what an amazing platform, first of all, but then to get the golden buzzer from Amanda, how did that feel?
It felt amazing, even though at the time I didn't fully grasp what it meant.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because I thought, I've done really well in this competition. I've got the buzzer, I'm cheering, I'm everything. But I did not fully grasp how life-changing that was until I went home. And then when it aired, and even until it aired, because it was a few months before it aired, I just thought I did well in this competition, all is well. But when it aired that night, my phone was ringing nonstop. I was one of the trending videos on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
It was just madness. I mean, the video has like 150 million views. And you can't even grasp what that means because it just seems like a number. But what it means is, I can be in Mauritius, I can be in Brazil, I can be in New York, and someone's always going to stop me on the street and say, are you that comedian? And that is not what I understood was happening at the time, right? And so it was life-changing. Like, I've done so many amazing things since, I've done projects with like the World Museum. I've done project with, I've been a voice on a cartoon. All kinds of amazing things have happened since, but it was the first step that led to all of them.
I always ask that question because I think having met several BGT, either, semi-finalists or anyone that's been on that show has had a different experience, basically. Usually a positive one, by the way, but I just like to ask the question because it's an interesting response. And I love the fact that, as you say, it puts you on a global platform where you're meeting people that love your work in places you didn't even know they were watching, which is just fantastic.
Also, I've done other television now, like, QI, Have I Got News For You, stuff like that. Nothing's like BGT in that just the machine of it.
Yes.
It's like a city. There are literally over 800 people working. It's like a little floating city. It was funny that my first television I've done was the biggest, insanest television I've done.
When you did the audition, did you think to yourself, yeah, I'm going to get into this. I'm going to be on this.
Actually, no. The only reason I did it was I needed a clip to get corporate shows. So if you want to perform for the Coca-Cola Christmas party, you need a television clip. And I didn't have one.
Oh.
Because they're not going to look at you if you've just got a film of you in a comedy club, which a mate filmed on his phone. So I was like, I can do that show. I'm good enough that I'll not get buzzed off, right? I didn't think that I was going to go through, but I thought I'll get a nice video clip, right? Because most comedians didn't get through. So I was like, they'll laugh. I'll get a nice clip and I'll be able to be, insurance award comedian or something like that. And then I got the buzzer and it changed my life, but I had not expected that at all. I mean, I was confident there's no way I'm getting buzzed. I'm funny, but I didn't think that I'm the sort of act who excels in it because I associated BGT with people who are like a lightning bolt of nature. So like a 7-year-old kid who can do magic or a 80-year-old man who can break dance. Do you know what I mean? Like, I thought you've got to be something like that. I'm just a dude who tells jokes.
Well, I think especially in the last few years, there've been a lot of comedians that have made it onto the show, including yourself.
Well, that is no. I actually think that's the Chaponda effect, right?
The Chaponda effect. Got ya.
No, to say that before I had done it, the only comedians who had done well in Britain's Got Talent were pretty much impressionists, jugglers, people who do comedy, but it's also got a variety thing. And then I did well just from doing my gags, doing them pretty much like I did in my set. And a lot of comedians saw, wait, Daliso's on tour now? Daliso's on television now? This works. And so every comic who I've worked with who's like, I'm funnier than this idiot, has now gone on Britain's Got Talent. And I'm happy to have been the canary in the coal mine. But it's now become a legitimate path. Before, the legitimate path was Edinburgh Festival, Live at the Apollo. But now BGT is actually seen as a Lost Voice guy won. Yeah. My friend Nabil Abdul Rashid
spoken to both of those before.
So I love that it's now a legitimate path to a comedy career.
Yeah, brilliant. And the last two you mentioned there, I've actually interviewed before. It is really refreshing, actually, as you say, just to have a change of tack in a way, because for me, BGT was always about, the dog dancing or, the acrobats swirling in the air or something like that.
I will say actually something amazing about BGT, which people don't realize, is for other shows, and I will say it's getting better, but for other shows, particularly 10 years ago, if you look, they used to never have more than one minority on. Right? If you look at old panel shows, it'll be there's one black person, or there's one woman, or there's one Asian, and there was a lot, or there's none, right? And I remember part of the reason I went on BGT was I was tired of being competing for one slot. While BGT does not care. They can be 52 black people one season. You can be female, you could be this religion, you could be disabled. In fact, the more diverse you are, the better, because a format like it loves diversity.
Right.
So I loved the fact that my being different wasn't going to stand against me. So that's one of the reasons I did it. And again, yes, they were delighted. They're like, oh, talk more about Africa. Oh, yes, tell us more about it. And I was like, this is great. Because there were shows which I tried to get on before where I found out, oh, they can't use you because they've already had Fumbi on. And I'm like, what? They can't have more than one black person? Do you know what I mean? It's changing. It's only 2017 that was, but I'm just saying, it's funny how 2024 is now more comfortable with you can have two minorities on.
I wholeheartedly hear what you're saying. And this is a whole other subject. My background's in TV, and I do think that my personal opinion is that, commissioners can be lazy, talent shows aside, that commissioners are lazy and they just go to the same old people and don't want to think outside the box. But it does seem like things are getting better. I really hope that we continue to improve a lot quicker, though, because it does feel like it's dragging a little bit. But I do hear what you're saying, and I think that's a really important and valid point that you've just made as well, Daliso. Obviously, you're out on tour, you're doing a UK tour. Are you going overseas at all with them?
Yes, so I do UK until June. Then July, I do Malawi, Zambia, Kenya, possibly adding Botswana in discussion, but there's an African leg. Then I come back to the UK, and then beginning of next year, again in discussion, so I can't confirm, but I'm trying to do some Southeast Asia and Australia.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Well, wishing you all the best with that.
Thank you.
Daliso, just a final question for you. Because you are in the arts and entertainment world, on Art to Art, I have a segment called the WATCHLIST. And the WATCHLIST is, how you have a to-do list, or when you go shopping, you've got all the list of things you need to get. So this is kind of all the things from the arts and entertainment world that you've got on your list to watch or listen to, read, any of those things. So it could even be an event, actually.
Okay, I want to watch the musical of The Time Traveler's Wife, because The Time Traveler's Wife is one of my favorite books ever by Audrey Niffenegger. It is glorious. If you're into science fiction, if you're into romance, either genre, it is an amazing one of both. And it's been adapted into a movie, which was okay. It's been adapted into a television show, which was magnificent. And now it's a musical. I shudder to think what it'll be like. So that's on my list. Every time I go to London, I try to squeeze it in, but I'm like, I'm filming this at this time. I'm recording this at this time. I will at some point watch that. So that's on my watch list. And then on my to-read list, I have got coming in the mail, Ken Follett, who wrote Pillars of the Earth, has written a prequel to it called Armor of something. I don't even know the name. I just told that's in the mail when it arrives via, well, I don't want to promote them. They're a terrible company, which is not very good to its workers, but they deliver within a day. So everybody knows who I'm talking about. So yes, I've got that book coming. I should have done it from an indie book. You know what I mean? Even though I always feel like, I don't know if you ever like this, my morals is against these corporate titans, which destroy everything and have monopolies.
Yes.
But then when I want to order something and I'm looking at the independents and I can't find it, I go straight to that soulless corporate entity and give them my money.
I'm just like you. I'm like, I've got my morals and I've got my principles. I'm like, how long is that going to take? What? Okay, I give in.
Exactly right. So those would be my watch list. But like all-time movie, if you've not watched Life is Beautiful, right? Pull it out, stick that in. All-time book, Man's Search for Meaning, absolutely astonishing. And all-time music, like Timeless, Tracy Chapman. That's the all-time watch list.
That is absolutely brilliant. Wow, you did that exceptionally well. Most people I ask, Daliso, will go, hang on a minute, I'm not prepared for this. My mind's gone blank. Usually my mind goes blank when I'm under pressure.
I know what I love.
That is an excellent list. Thank you. You've got my interest piqued, that's for sure. What an absolute joy to have a chat with you today, Daliso. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you. You're listening to Art with Amanny Mo. Yep, that's me, where we bring you some cosy conversations with some fabulous people from the world of arts and entertainment. I absolutely love this chat with comedian Daliso Chaponda. What a funny guy, and all of those wonderful stories as well. And what did you think of his watchlist picks? Such a great variety in there. So impressed. Daliso's currently out on his UK tour, Feed This Black Man Again, until the end of June, with an African leg of the tour coming soon, and potentially further afield too. You heard it here first. But if you want to follow him, you can do so on his socials, or head on over to Daliso's website for all the information you could possibly want on the man and his whereabouts. Well, strictly professionally speaking, of course, DalisoChaponda.com is the place to go for your tickets as well. Once again, a massive thank you to my wonderful guest, comedian Daliso Chaponda, to my nephew Luca Mo for the fabulous music you hear throughout the podcast, and you can follow him on socials at Luca Mo Music if you fancy it, and a huge thank you to you for tuning into this rather entertaining episode of Art to Art with Amanny Mo. There are plenty more episodes that you can listen to, either by heading to your favourite listening platform, or you can click through to our website, Art to Art, that's art, the number 2, art.podbean.com. I'll be back with some more eclectic guests sharing their fascinating stories from the world of arts and entertainment soon. Please do like, follow and share the love with your friends. Until next time, see ya! You're listening to Art with Amanny Mo. This is your podcast that brings you interviews, reviews, arts and entertainment news, all wrapped up in one place.